I thought I was a king. I thought she'd handed me a kingdom. But what she really gave me was a guillotine. For the first 35 years of my life, my privilege was a given. It wasn't a silver spoon, it was a platinum ladle, and I never had to lift a finger. My father, Aunt Eleanor's younger brother, was the charming wrecking ball of the family. He died in a sports car that cost more than a house, leaving behind nothing but debt and me, a son with an insatiable appetite for the life he'd taught me to crave. Aunt Eleanor was his opposite. She was the sharp, brilliant, steady hand who took the family fortune, quietly paid off my father's catastrophic debts, and then multiplied what was left tenfold. She was a builder in a family of spenders. While I burned through cash, Eleanor nurtured it. She lived in the family mansion, a place that dripped with history. On the rare sunny afternoons, I'd see her polishing silver inherited from her mother, or tending to the roses my grandfather had planted decades ago. The air inside was scented with old books and mahogany. On the walls, sepia-toned photographs of our ancestors watched silently. Her life was an act of humility I found offensive. A 10-year-old sedan, clothes that were classic instead of trendy, tea in old porcelain cups instead of champagne from a bottle that cost $1,000. To me, she wasn't a financial genius. She was a dragon sitting on a pile of gold she didn't know how to spend. And I was her only heir. It felt like my duty to make that money sing. My life was a calculated rejection of hers. I had the glass penthouse downtown that bled money, the new German sports car every 2 years. I ran a consulting firm, a joke funded by a generous allowance from Eleanor, a house of cards swaying in the wind while I waited for the main prize. Every Sunday, I'd pay my dues. I'd walk into her quiet, history-scented world and fill it with my noise. I'd tell her stories of my exploits, thinly veiled boasts about how I was spending her money. I remember sitting on her lap as a boy, her fingers tracing the words in a heavy, leather-bound book. Now, I stood before her bragging about offshore accounts. "You should see the new Panamera, Eleanor," I'd say. "We should take it for a spin. Blow the cobwebs off that old Volvo." She'd give me that patient, knowing smile I mistook for adoration. "I'm quite happy with my Volvo, Daniel. It gets me where I need to go." One evening, she gestured to the dusty cedar chest in the hall. The chest smelled faintly of cedar and hope, even after 50 years. "Your grandfather built that with his own hands. There's more value in that chest than in any of your cars." I just rolled my eyes. I was complaining about capital gains taxes once, swirling a vintage wine. "It's theft," I declared. "The government punishes success." She put her fork down, her gaze level. "Paying taxes is the price of a civilized society, Daniel. To whom much is given, much is expected." "Please, that's what poor people say," I scoffed. "You believe money is a throne, Eleanor. It's not. It's a tool." For a second, her eyes flashed with something steely. As she spoke, she reached over and paused the old jazz record that was spinning in the corner, the sudden silence a quiet, symbolic end to our harmony. "Daniel, money can build walls or bridges. You've spent your life choosing walls." Then she murmured almost to herself, "Arrogance blinds men faster than poverty ever will." I just laughed, loud and obnoxious, so blinded by my own reflection I couldn't see the woman across the table. I didn't see the grandmaster positioning her pieces. I thought I was the king. I was just a pawn she was preparing to sacrifice. What I didn't know was that Eleanor wasn't planning a will. She was planning a war. Her revenge wasn't an act. It was architecture, and the foundation was already poured. The beginning of my end came on a crisp autumn afternoon. She summoned me to her study. Her lawyer, Mr. Peterson, sat beside her, his face a mask of neutrality. For a thrilling second, I thought this was it, the handover. "Daniel," she began, her voice calm as a frozen lake, "I've restructured my estate." My heart hammered against my ribs. I arranged my face into a mask of dutiful concern. "I've decided to place the majority of my assets into a charitable trust," she said, watching me. The words didn't connect. A charitable trust? A what? Mr. Peterson cleared his throat. "A charitable remainder trust, Daniel. A highly effective tool for wealth preservation and legacy planning. The trust will provide me with a fixed income for life," Eleanor explained, "and after I'm gone, the rest, the remainder, goes to a new foundation, the Eleanor Vance Foundation for Arts and Education." The air left the room. A hysterical laugh bubbled up and exploded out of me. It was a howl. "A charitable trust? Have you lost your mind? You're just going to give it all away." I saw a flicker of profound hurt in her eyes, her voice wavering for half a second before it turned to cold steel. Strong women hold back their tears for later. "Daniel," she said, her voice dangerously quiet, "this is my decision. It's my money." "It's our family's money," I shot back, on my feet now. "It's the Vance legacy. You're trading a dynasty for a plaque on a wall." "The trust is irrevocable, Daniel," she said. She closed a heavy, leather-bound ledger on her desk. The soft thud echoed in the silent room. A coffin lid closing on my future. "It's done. You'll regret this," I sneered, storming out. "When I'm in charge, I'll fix this mess." That was the last real conversation we ever had. I mocked her to my friends, called her a senile old fool. I had laughed in her face, not understanding that I had just given her the only weapon she ever needed. If you think losing a fortune is the worst thing that can happen, think again. What she took from me next will haunt me forever. Hit that like button and subscribe, because what comes next isn't just a downfall. It's an annihilation. Now back to the story. Aunt Eleanor died on a Tuesday. I performed the part of the grieving nephew while pure adrenaline shot through me. The wait was over. The following Monday, I walked into Mr. Peterson's office, certain I was about to inherit an empire. I sat across from him, straightening my designer cufflinks. My tie felt like it was strangling me, my hands gripping the arms of the chair like a lifeline. The distant cousins shifted uncomfortably in their seats. My own heartbeat pounded in my ears like a war drum. Peterson read through the small bequests. Then he got to the main event. "As most of you know," Peterson said, his voice methodical, "5 years ago, Eleanor Vance established the Vance Charitable Remainder Trust. Upon its creation, she transferred approximately 95% of her net worth into this trust. This action was, and is, irrevocable." Irrevocable. The word hit me like a gunshot. A cold sweat dripped down my back. The terms of the trust stipulated that Eleanor would receive a fixed annual payment for life, significantly reducing her tax burden. He looked right at me. It was a remarkably astute financial strategy. a master class in wealth management. Now, upon her passing, Peterson continued, his voice gaining a hard edge, the trust's remainder, the entirety of its principal, currently valued at just over $450 million, is to be distributed in full to its sole named beneficiary. My heart hammered. A beneficiary. It had to be me. A brilliant roundabout way to give me the money tax-free. She was a genius. Mr. Peterson put on his glasses. The sole and exclusive beneficiary of the Vance Charitable Remainder Trust is the Eleanor Vance Foundation for Arts and Education. Silence. The room was a vacuum. I felt the blood drain from my face. "What does that mean?" I stammered. For a fleeting, desperate second, I thought, maybe she named me director. Maybe I'll run the foundation. For the first time, I saw satisfaction in Peterson's eyes. "It means, Daniel," he said, closing the folder with a soft, final thud, "that there is nothing left to inherit. The house, the stocks, the art, it all belongs to the foundation. It has for 5 years. He then delivered the final, savage cut. "Your aunt didn't just plan for the future, Daniel. She planned for your failure." He slid a single check across the table. "She did leave you this, the balance of her personal checking account, $17,426.38. The room spun. One of my cousins was trying to hide a smirk. "The will," I choked out. "I have just read it," Peterson said calmly. "There is one final clause, a personal letter addressed to you." I tore it open. "My dearest Daniel." I imagine you're surprised. I remember the night your father left us with nothing. I promised you would never go without. I kept that promise, but I never promised you the world. I prayed you'd choose wisdom over vanity. You didn't. So I chose for you ... This trust was a shield to protect our family's legacy from the one thing I knew would destroy it. You. I could have left you the money. It would have been gone in a decade. Instead, it will now support generations, a true dynasty of the spirit. I loved you too much to leave you a weapon you would only use against yourself. I hope one day you learn to build something of your own. With love, Aunt Eleanor. P.S. Checkmate was never about the board, Daniel. It was about your life. I crushed the letter in my fist. "I'll fight this," I raged at Peterson. He just shook his head. "You can't, Daniel. It is a steel vault locked from the inside 5 years ago. It's over." Over wasn't the right word. The demolition had just begun. My litigation shark sighed over the phone. "It's a crat. It's unassailable. I can't help you." That was the first door slamming shut. The story broke a week later. The headline stung, "Heir Without a Throne, How Eleanor Vance Outsmarted a Fortune Hunter in Her Own Family." I became a cautionary tale. The shame was a physical thing. Friends vanished. In a cafe, I overheard 2 women whispering, "Isn't that the Vance boy?" What a shame. The creditors weren't so quiet. My most public humiliation was selling my suits back to the same boutique I once bragged about shopping in, the clerk's pitying smile burning a hole in my pride. The bank called in the loan on my consulting firm. The final blow was the eviction notice. As movers stripped the art from my penthouse, I ran my fingers along the wall, each empty nail hole a tiny scar marking what I'd lost. Lying awake, I replayed that conversation, my smug, idiotic laugh echoing in the silence. She hadn't just disinherited me, she set a deadline for my lies to expire. I had hit rock bottom, or so I thought, but my aunt's final lesson hadn't even been delivered yet. It's been 3 years. I have a real job now, at a car dealership. I wear a polyester tie. Last month, the paper ran a story on the Vance Foundation's first scholarship class. 100 kids standing on the steps of my old home, their faces bright with the future my aunt bought for them. And looking at that picture, something inside me finally broke. Not with rage, with clarity. My aunt hadn't destroyed me. I had destroyed myself. She didn't ruin the family name. She saved it for me. This entire, brutal, 5-year checkmate wasn't an act of punishment. It was an act of preservation. I still have her letter. I hope you learn to build something of your own. I'm not there yet. But last weekend, I volunteered at a youth center. A kid, no older than 17, was struggling with his college application, an application for the Eleanor Vance Scholarship. He asked me for advice. For a long moment I hesitated, but then I sat down. I remember the smell of pencil shavings and the echo of Eleanor's voice as I helped him, guiding his pen, writing, "Your future matters." It was a small thing, building a single sentence on a page instead of a life on lies. But for the first time, it felt like I was finally learning to play the game she was talking about all along. For years, I thought Eleanor was punishing me. Now I know. She was saving me from myself. In the end, her checkmate wasn't about money. It was about teaching me the difference between being rich and having value. A lesson I paid for with my entire world. Thank you for listening. They say greed writes the check, but karma always cashes it. Do you think Eleanor was right, or was this revenge too cruel? Let me know in the comments. Watch this next for another jaw-dropping tale of greed, betrayal, and revenge you won't see coming.